All right, good evening. How are you all in the crowd there? I'm going to turn around just for a second here so we can talk to you all. Thank you all for coming out. We are very excited to be here and excited that you all joined us. And Liz and myself, Liz and I are ready to get the program started. We are going to go through a series of questions. I feel like I should stand up here real quick. Go through a series of questions with the candidates. They'll have some staff there in the crowd. Obviously, they will collect some public questions throughout the evening as well. So if you have those, you'll see some of the staff later on. And we hope to get as much information as we can from the candidates for you all to be able to make that decision.
So I'm just going to go over a couple of the rules of engagement. Please silence your cell phones while you're in here tonight. We will be taking some questions from the audience. Those questions will be looked at and vetted, and then those questions, there will be a time at the end of the debate where those questions will be asked of the candidates. But for the most part, Anthony and I will be asking questions that have already been scripted ahead of time. Each candidate will have an allotted time for their opening statement of 1.5 minutes each, and for a closing statement of 2 minutes each. Each of the candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to each question and then allowed 30 minutes to rebut and or provide clarity to an answer upon request by either Anthony or me. A yellow marker will be raised when 15 seconds remain, and then a red marker will be raised by the timekeepers when the allotted time has expired. So, I hope you all will sit back and relax and learn something from our two candidates tonight. And again, if you have questions that you would like to submit, I believe the volunteers are going around collecting those questions now. So, are you ready, gentlemen?
Ready to go.
Okay. Councilmember Brand, the first question is for you. What is your vision for the city of Fresno, more specifically for Southwest Fresno?
Well, my vision is the same for the entire city, whether it's 93720, 93701. I want to see a city that can transform from generational poverty, high unemployment, high crime rate, and the ills that have beset this city for the last 3 or 4 generations. I've been here since 1954. And this has never been a rich town, but over the last 20 or 30 years, it's really taken on the burden of being a large city and all the problems that go along with that. And I want to, do that through introducing an Economic Expansion Act, a detailed plan on how to rebuild and generate our economy, thousands of jobs, and create opportunities for all of our citizens that I believe now are unevenly distributed, particularly if you take 93701, which is probably, I believe, 29% unemployment rate. 93720 is probably only 10. This entire city, to be successful, has to transform, not just North Fresno. It's got to be the entire city.
Thank you, Mr. Brand, and I apologize because we were supposed to have an opening statement first, so I will get your response to that in just a minute, but let's have our opening statements if you would like to go ahead and give yours.
Sure. Well,
Thank you.
Thank the Southwest CDC and Housing Authority for hosting this event. Where are the 2 young men that introduced me? Oh, they right down there. They did a great job on the introduction. I don't know if I even have to give an introduction. My campaign is about solutions, not sound bites. And as these kids mentioned, I have deep roots in this community. My grandparents immigrated here over 100 years ago. They came from Italy. They lived for many years on McKenzie Street. That's where I was a kid in southeast Fresno. And we were a poor family, but we were very close. I was the first one in my family to graduate from college. And I did complete 3 degrees in 3 years, finishing with a master's degree at USC in public administration. Started a 2-person real estate office that grew to over 100 people and became Wesco Equities, manages thousands of units in this valley and does construction jobs. And in 2008, at the young age of 59, I was elected to the city council, and I've been there for 8 years. And during my 8 years, I've passed 19 legislative acts that dramatically, profoundly changed city financial practices and had a big impact on this city. We hired more police, more fire. We paid off $36 million in internal loans. We went from junk bond status investment grade A, which saves the taxpayers millions of dollars. As I mentioned earlier, my vision for Fresno is a economic transformation using my Economic Expansion Act as a vehicle to transform this community, to end generational poverty, and reduce unemployment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Perea, will you give us your opening statement, please?
Great, will do. Thank you so much for all of you being here today. And we all know there's a presidential debate going on too, so it's an honor for you to be here listening to us. And I'd like to just take a quick moment to introduce my friend and colleague, Supervisor Pacheco in the back there. He's your district representative. Thank you for being here, Supervisor. And of course, the sponsors of today's event. I think this is a timely event. Obviously, we have a November 8th election coming up. But I have to tell you, I was not nervous until about a minute before I came out on stage when I met Lennis, the president of the school here, and he told me that one day he's going to be a lawyer, then by 35 a mayor of Fresno, and then the president somewhere after that. So I'm glad I'm a little bit ahead of you right now. But I'd like to thank the principal QT, Ms. Zamora, did an amazing job preparing your students, Blake Valdez and Sandra Rodriguez. Would you please stand one more time, please? Give them a hand. They did an amazing job. Yeah. Our future is in good hands. But what I can tell you very briefly is, I was born and raised in Fresno, southeast Fresno. And I did a lot of, wow, 15 seconds already. I did a lot of good things in this community that my parents brought me to where I am today. So what I want to do talking to you tonight is talk about how we bring the future going forward for our kids and grandkids. Because what my parents did for me, we're going to do for all of our kids. And that's what today's discussion will be about, especially focused on Southwest Fresno.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Perea. The next question will be for you. How do you intend to generate longstanding sustainable funding and those funding streams specifically for the needs of business development here within Southwest Fresno? In addition to the business development, also, how do you intend to address disparities with code enforcement and other issues that have been pretty prominent problems within the Southwest Fresno community?
Okay, the last part was disparity, code enforcement, and the
code enforcement, and also the sustainable funding streams for business development.
for businesses. Okay, let me start with the last piece first, because when you talk about code enforcement, in my mind, what we've been talking a lot about in this campaign are about slumlords. And I think we have a lot of dilapidated housing, both rental and houses in neighborhoods that have just destroyed neighborhoods. Because I think what you find is when you have a slum in a neighborhood, it not only negatively impacts the people that are living inside that home, it impacts the neighborhood too, because people lose hope and people leave, and it just creates and expands that slum. So what I can tell you, under Perea mayorship, you're going to see a very aggressive code enforcement program. I'm not going to need a task force to tell me how to get to dealing with slumlords, holding them accountable for their properties, and they're going to do one of two things. Either they're going to fix them and be respectful to their tenants and to the neighborhoods, or they're not going to be slumlords in this city anymore. We're going to deal with them. As far as the economic development, we have obviously a lot of opportunities coming forward to us, but a lot of it is tied around economic development, bringing jobs into this community. And we know we have to expand our job base. But the immediate opportunity that we have, that we're going to talk more about today, is the cap and trade money that the city of Fresno just acquired this past week, about $70 million that we're going to have access to. And that money is designed for disadvantaged communities. And I can assure you that Southwest Fresno will get the lion's share of that money, because we need to do a lot of work in this side of the city. So even though I think they're going to try to allocate that money before the end of this year, I think it's going to be very important for you to be engaged in the community processes in the next month or two, and let's hold until next year, because Southwest, as well as Southeast, needs to get their share of that money.
Councilman Brand, would you like to also respond to development and also code enforcement issues within Southwest Fresno?
I'll start with the code enforcement. Code enforcement has been the problem in Fresno. Simply doubling the staff doesn't solve the problem. Using this current, slumlord, substandard housing issue as the starting point, Nobody's even defined what the standard is for substandard. First, you have 5 code enforcement people, you're going to get 5 different sets of standards. And I've been in the business for 38 years, and I can tell you, code enforcement's been inconsistent, capricious, and very ineffective. So a lot needs to be done, starting with one, you got to define the problem. There's 90,000 units in the city. How many of those units are substandard? And you can't even answer that question until you answer the basic question, what is your definition of substandard? So there's 3 elements to that. One is the ordinances that exist. We've been changing those over the last 2 years. 2, it's going to be the judicial or code or the enforcement legally and fines. We've added innovative ideas like receiverships to come in and take over property where the owner refuses to make any changes. And the third is going to be inspections and finding an effective way to go out there and treat the problem. Because simply using cliches like this is going to be the dirty dozen, I'm going to double, it's not going to solve the problem. You've got, in business, you have to hone in and define the problem. I mentioned earlier regarding economic development. Any economic development has got to be citywide. And there's got to be, I'm the only one with a detailed blueprint on how to generate the jobs that'll make a difference in this town.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next we're going to talk about investment in Southwest Fresno. During your term as mayor, you have a budget that you can allocate to certain things. What would you do with that budget to help improve the conditions in Southwest Fresno? Lee Brand.
Okay. Well, it starts with infrastructure. One of the problems has been, and as Henry mentioned earlier, the cap and trade is a huge step in that direction. Anybody attempting to develop, and again, always remember, market forces drive everything. You can't simply wave the magic wand of government and things are going to transform. In Southwest Fresno, there needs to be more single-family homes developed. There's too many, apartment complexes, too many multifamily, that we need to have more diversity, we need opportunity. And to do that, you're going to have to get the money to build the infrastructure, and you have to develop the business model. A lot of the areas in Southwest Fresno are zoned industrial, and that's been a blessing and a curse. I've had people come up and we need more jobs, and then other people come from the opposite side saying that it's not healthy, it's too close to freeway, there's vehicle miles traveled. So you also have to work with the county, you have to work with the private sector, and you need to develop industrial parks. I've heard this dream for probably 10 years of a 1,000-acre industrial park. Well, that's still a dream. That needs to be put together because that's going to employ people across the entire city.
All right, Supervisor Perea.
Could you give me the question one more time?
Yes. During your term as mayor, what will be your budgeting priorities for communities in Southwest Fresno?
Okay. Well, when a mayor creates a vision for a city, that vision is for the entire city, not just a part of it. And there's no question that in Southwest Fresno, there's been a lot of disinvestment over many years, and it's time to invest into Southwest Fresno. I started in this discussion with the cap and trade money because we're talking about real dollars that are now coming to Fresno that will be allocated next year. Okay, that is why I believe it's important that the decision making on the allocation of that money does not happen this year. I think the next mayor has to be in charge of that, making sure that it works with every community at the table, making sure that we are providing these resources for the entire city, in this case, Southwest Fresno. The other investments and priorities that we'll make within our city budget are bringing funds so that kids can be tutored and mentored at City Hall and be paid while they're doing it. We need to bring work experience back into this community so kids can connect the value of what they learn in schools to the real world of work. And I think we need to work with the State Center Community College and build that junior college out here in Southwest Fresno along with a technical school. So I think there's a lot of discussion that has to occur, but it's going to be about leadership and partnerships, people working together to get things done in this community. Time out. Okay.
All right, we're going to shift gears here just a little bit from the fiscal side of things to the diversity. Of course, currently the top 5 African-American leaders in the current administration, of the top 5, 4 of those are elected and 1 was appointed by City Council. Councilman Brown, we'll start with you. In your administration, even beyond just African Americans, but talk to us about your plan to diversify both your cabinet, your administration, and the city's leadership as well.
Well, we live in a very diverse city, and I grew up here many years ago, and this cauldron of people from, the African Americans, the Italians, and Armenians, and Hispanics, has been, in recent immigrants, Asians. It's really, I love people, and I love this diverse population. And one advantage, of course, is you got many eating options as far as all the cuisine here in Fresno. But the administration should represent the face of the community in terms of African American, Hispanic, Asian. And it's easy to say that up here at the lectern and say, I want to make 25% here, 10% there. When you're there in office, you also want to get the best people. You want people that have talent, that have backgrounds that can make a difference. If I simply make choices because I want 2 African Americans, 2 Hispanics, 2 Asians, I'm not going to be doing the citizens of Fresno good. Do I make efforts to do that? Absolutely. And I want to make sure in key positions there's people there that represent this community. But you still have to find people capable of handling a very diverse city and a city with a lot of challenges in it.
Just a quick follow-up on that, and not to really nail you down on it, but beyond finding the most qualified people, have you given some thought to your approach on how to go about bringing about a diverse cabinet? Maybe some steps that you would like to see implemented that maybe haven't been done before?
I'm sorry, did you?
Have you thought about a kind of a game plan or steps that you may like to see implemented to facilitate it beyond, obviously because as a city we all want the best people, but have you given thought to what your approach or what the search process may look like to ensure that you have a diverse cabinet that represents the area of Southwest Fresno and the city of Fresno?
I've been primarily focused on winning the election first before I get into who the administration is going to be. But I think a big part of that will be a transition team. And I know Henry and I have both met in many organizations. We've both made commitments to certain people like Faith and Community and other groups that we're going to have those people on our transition team. And for me, that's what I intend to do. And that citizen input, that transition team will be part of the decision-making process and filling key roles within the administration.
Thank you. Supervisor Perea, the same question. What is going to be your approach to ensure that that both your cabinet and also the city leadership is a diverse representation of the diversity that we have here in the Fresno area?
Well, I've messaged very clearly in this campaign that based on the vision that I create, working with the community and working with the city council to have a shared vision, I have pretty much said that just about every department head in the city is going to be re-interviewing for their jobs because they're going to have to be in line with the vision. So if they're in line, that's great. If they're not, then there's going to be a lot of opportunity. But I think beyond that, I think it is important that any administration reflect the diversity of its community, and my administration will from the top on down. And I think when we look at other opportunities, for example, our planning commissions, those key commissions that we have at the city that makes important decisions that affect everybody's lives, we're going to start placing people from different communities into strategically placed commissions, whether it's the Zoo Authority Board, whether it's the Planning Commission or other important commissions that are in decision-making bodies. We're going to start building the team, and we're going to start lifting people up.
Thank you both so much.
Okay, there is a lot of talk about racial divide in this country, and I'm wondering where you all stand on this. What will you do as mayor of this city to address racial and ethnic divides in our community? Councilman Moran.
That's a really difficult question because this nation is really reeling from the racial relations. I think the tension's been there for a long time. And I think the technological revolution we have with cell phones and everything's recorded and it's on Facebook with 40,000 people within a matter of minutes dramatically changes the conversation. And we're seeing even now with athletes, whether you love or hate Colin Kaepernick, he's out there making statements and there's people in college games and that's a reflection on our city. And I can tell you honestly that my opinions on public relations and racial relations has changed just in the last year. Events in Ferguson and Baltimore and all across this country, there's things I would normally not even consider that I am considering as options right now. And one option is a Citizens Advisory Council that's been mentioned, has been talked about for a long time, that would work in conjunction with a police auditor. And I would like, first thing I would do would make the police auditor be a local position, because I think the current guy is doing a good job, but you don't have a feel for Fresno when you live in Colorado. You're in the Rockies and you're near Vail and the ski resorts. You don't think about Fresno. You need a local person here. And I believe you need an expanded role with the Citizen Advisory Council to work in close concert with the police auditor. And I think who our chief of police is, and I think the job requirements are going to require somebody with a lot of patience, wisdom, the ability to collaborate, the heart to work with people and to see things from both sides of the aisle. And it's going to be a very difficult task that, whether it's Henry or myself, we're both going to have a major challenge to make sure this city keeps racial harmony and keeps in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Perea.
You know, I tie this question to the last one that was asked. I think when you have diversity in your administration from the top down, that's when you start changing relationships in the community. Every community that I have spoken to in the last 6 months, whether it's the Hmong, the Hispanic, the African American, the Muslim, the Sikh, everybody has the same question that you asked right now is how are we going to let us in to City Hall? So, of course, the other side of that question then is we haven't been invited into City Hall. And I think that's the responsibility of a mayor, to be a leader, to embrace every part of its community and make it a part of its administration. You know, I was glued to, and have been glued like a lot of you, to the TV just this last week on North Carolina. And I've been watching how the mayor of that city has been messaging and working on that issue. And you always, Monday morning quarterback, say, well, what would I do different? And what I have learned absolutely from what's happening in this country and what's happening in this city, your mayor has to absolutely be engaged in every level of decision making when it comes to issues on the street violence, incidents that may occur between public safety and the community. The mayor has to be front and center, one, in the decision making process, and two, out in the community, talking to the community about what's going to happen on a go-forward basis. That's what a leader does. And I think that's what this community needs. It needs someone who's going to step out there in the good times when you're cutting the ribbons, and in the bad times and tough times when it's time to talk about the tough issues and keep and bring a community together. That's what a mayor has to do, and it has to do it in every corner of this city.
Thank you. All right, the next series of questions is going to focus on the economic development, obviously, of Fresno, but more specifically Southwest Fresno. We'll start off with Councilman Brand for this particular question. We have the question we really want to focus in on is the revitalization plan that you have for community revitalization. When it pertains to Southwest specifically, talk to us about the efforts that you see yourself making within your first 90 days or first 6 months in office. What is one of the key things that you think needs to happen for community revitalization to happen within Southwest Fresno?
Well, I think Southwest Fresno has historically been neglected in this city over the last 50 plus years. And it started with the passing of a historic general plan a few years ago, the 2035 general plan. That was the first general plan in 50 years that didn't expand the sphere of influence and put the focus and the efforts on revitalization in downtown, southeast, and southwest Fresno. So that's the starting point. And to be successful, the city is going to have to, because it's a poor city, is going to have to use all available state and federal resources. Again, going back to cap and trade money, whatever other funds the city can get for infrastructure. There also has to be, again, a business model. Nothing's going to happen spontaneously. And the Economic Expansion Act that I mentioned earlier is targeted for industrial areas and is targeted for areas of revitalization. So you want to come in Southwest Fresno and develop a retail a residential center, you can get incentives. You're going to get abatement of your development impact fees, off-site improvements. These are the kind of things that drop the cost and make it more plausible for somebody to come in and make that investment. When the Kearney Palms Shopping Center was done, about 15, 20 years ago, that was a major change in the city of Fresno. The entrepreneur who did that stuck his neck out and made a major risk. We've got to pave the way. Government doesn't solve the problem. Government creates the environment where business is successful, and we can focus again on Southwest Fresno, both for commercial development and for residential development.
Okay, Supervisor Perea, what
Yeah.
would you do for revitalization in Southwest Fresno? And I'm also curious if you could address this. Is it more expensive for investors and people who want to build in Southwest Fresno to come in and actually develop something?
Okay. You know, the Kearney Palms Shopping Center, which is the last major economic development project in Southwest Fresno, was done by my city council when I was on there. So it's certainly something that we were focused on under the leadership of Dan Ronquillo, who was the council at the time. We got that done. But nothing has happened since. But I think, you know, when you look at some of the messaging that has occurred in this city, sometimes you wonder the wisdom of it. But we have what's called the Tale of Two Cities, you know, that divides Fresno along Shaw Avenue between the north and the south. Well, I can tell you there's another division, there's another city, and it's divided on this side of the tracks, and it's Southwest Fresno. And I think we have to end those types of analogies and start getting to work. So you look back at my history, when we built the baseball stadium, I was listening to a KMJ show recently, and they were trying to message that they made a mistake by putting the main entrance to the stadium facing the way it is. They said it should have been facing into downtown. Well, downtown is very important, don't get me wrong. But I was on that council, and we designed that stadium, and we intentionally put that front door looking out into West Fresno because we saw the future of including a city. When we designed a high-speed rail station, there was one front door going into the Fulton Mall. And like I say, I support downtown 100%. But I said, no, it has two front doors. It has to have a front door into downtown and a front door into West Fresno. See, there's a lot of symbolism to that. And when you start talking about economic development and investment, that's when the city starts then making the types of decisions that it has to make sure that people are invested economically in this community. And as far as the last part of your question, is it more expensive? It depends on where and all that, but the infrastructure is always a challenge in the older parts of your community, and obviously when developers are building, they want to make sure that the investment is going to get a profit for them at the end. So I think there's a responsibility the city has to increase investment for infrastructure, and I think that's the opportunity that $70 million gives us, is to start putting that investment in strategic places in Southwest Fresno so we can create the opportunity for business expansion.
Thank you.
All right, Supervisor Perea, with a high-speed rail on the horizon, of course, Fresno residents are not fully prepared to meet the demands of some of the skill jobs associated with being able to acquire the jobs, both with construction and operation. Give us your outlook on what you would like to see happen with the local skill and trade, both trade programs and also workers here, so that they are prepared to be able to be employable for some of those jobs, both with high-speed rail construction and also the normal operation once it's fully functional.
Right. I've been very involved and supportive with high-speed rail for the past 7 years, and our goal from the county end is to bring the high-speed maintenance facility to Fresno County. I really believe that's going to be one of the biggest economic engines to start transforming our local economy. There's no question that the $6 billion that there's being spent in the valley, there's about close to $3 billion that are being spent right now on construction as they're moving the line down the line. And 30% of those are small business contracts. And I think the good news when I go to some of those meetings is they can't find enough small business minority contractors to fill the bill. And that's a good problem to have because it just means it creates more opportunity for everybody to get engaged and start a business and get a piece of that pie. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Skills training, Councilmember Baines is working with Councilmember Soria and the trades right now to bring the Mandela Center to Fresno. And it will be located somewhere in West Fresno. They've already had the first $1 million allocated to it, and that is going to be specifically designed to train the workforce for high-speed rail. So, I mean, there's a lot of good opportunity that's happening right now in this community. Job creation and expansion is going to be critical, but building that high-speed maintenance facility number 1 and the downtown station is going to be critical to transforming the economy of this community. And I can tell you I've been dedicated every day for the past 6-7 years, and until my last day in office, I will be working on high-speed rail, because you talk about putting people back to work and creating opportunity and taking care of a lot of these issues related to poverty that we have in this city. That's a good start to get there.
Thank you. Councilman Brand, same question.
It's on the high-speed rail. And
Yes, give us your thoughts about these skilled trades, and even if you need to expand beyond the high-speed rail, but what do you see as the future of the skilled training available here for some of the folks that'll need to be applying for the construction jobs, and also some of the operators as the train is functional?
Well, then this is a problem that's plagued this city for years. This city, this county is ag-based, and ag is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that's just here. We have this abundant food. It's a curse in that it provides a lot of low-paying jobs, a lot of seasonal jobs that don't give people the opportunity to make good incomes and be successful. So in Fresno, we have a lot of people that are really underemployed. Oliver Baines introduced a targeted hiring ordinance about a few months back that targeted low census tracts with high poverty rates to get an apprenticeship program to get people that normally would never get engaged in these construction trades that are good trades. That's a start in the right direction. It also embraces the issue of career technical education that has really been talked about and bannered about, but never really, very little has been done. I think I've been working with State Center trustees and Fresno Unified people to try to accelerate that process. And the State Center recently passed a bond to build a campus. And there's so many potential jobs. In addition to high-speed rail, you got a downtown community medical center with building 1,000 rooms, and get the city of Fresno doing a $500 million public works project. There's a lot of skilled jobs, not only in the construction trades, but within medical technology and manufacturing. So this also goes back to the underlying problem of poverty. Just cast this dark shadow across the entire city. We have to find ways to get people that are perpetually underemployed, not employed, get them GEDs, get them job training, get them in the workforce, get them to be part of the American dream.
Thank you. We're going to move on to housing now, and we sort of touched on the landlord issue earlier. And you brought up a very good question, Councilman Brand. What is standard? What should be standard? What should be standard in housing, and how would you keep landlords accountable for standard housing?
Well, there's a state definition of housing that, for example, that doesn't include air conditioning or heating, which I think when it's 105 degrees, you're not asking too much to do that. This is my business. I've been doing this for 38 years. Again, number one, you've got to define. It's got to be safe, habitable housing, plumbing, no roaches, the basic stuff. There's got to be a definition that everybody works from. And you need to identify the problem. And it's not that difficult to identify where the problem's at. You look at the number of code enforcement violations, the number of police calls, you can pretty well target where people are going. Now, the only exception to this is going to be single-family homes where you have one person and it's going to be harder to identify. And the worst examples, like Somerset Village, are generally immigrant populations that, for whatever reason, are reluctant to go to authorities. So the city is using their Fresno Go app and other things, but we need to kind of take that outreach further. I mentioned earlier, we have ordinances that are ineffective. For example, when you have a fine, you're fined $100 because your weeds are too high. You're fined $100 because you have a 10-foot hole in your ceiling. You got to differentiate between the fines. You got to have the fine equivalent to the type of damage it's causing. That's number one. The city's been lacking in enforcement. We can have all the laws and rules on the books, and if we have 500 people lined up and only one attorney processing, we're not going to get anything done. So we have added. We probably need to add more more staff to enforcement, because you generally hit people in the pocketbook. That's where you're going to make a big difference. And then a lot of talk about inspections. Do you inspect the entire inventory of 90,000? It would probably take 3 or 4 years to do that. I say you start out with those complexes you can clearly identify, and you can enforce regulations. Am I past my time here?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
So I just want to know if you will go on record then, as you said that you need to increase the staff of code enforcers. Would you go on record tonight saying, if you were mayor, that you would actually put your money where your mouth is where that's concerned?
Yeah, but I would do it in a wise, judicious manner, because simply throwing money to problems is not going to solve it. We've been throwing money away for a long time.
No, but you said that you would actually hire more people, or you would increase
I would
the
hire
staff.
more in the city attorney's office, or I would outsource to private attorneys to do prosecution.
Okay. Supervisor Perea, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, well, there's several pieces to it. I think first what I'd say is a lot of the rules and codes, health and safety codes are in place for what should be basic standard safe housing. Those are in place. The issue and problem has been consistent enforcement. I can tell you when I was on the city council, that was a very serious issue for us, and we demonstrated that by, one, focusing on slumlords, and two, doubling our code enforcement unit at the time, and they were very effective. Mr. Brand's council cut that code enforcement unit in half. So when I message about the dirty dozen in this community, I know there's some folks who would like to have every rental unit in this community inspected, but I message the dirty dozen because when I talk to the people like from No More Slumlords, they talk about those worst of the worst offenders, and that's where I believe the city should spend all of its resources, going after those who are the worst offenders impacting the poorest neighborhoods and deal with them immediately. And you deal with them by enforcing the codes, by having a code enforcement team that'll get the job done, and then holding the people accountable. Too many times you get fines, and the fines get lost in the system, and before you know it, they're not paying their fines anymore. So no, if you want to do business in Fresno, that's great. We'll support you 100%, but you're going to do it right. And if you're going to have slum apartments or slum housing, you're not welcome in Fresno. It's really going to be that simple under Perea administration.
Okay, thank you.
Can I respond to that? Okay.
Do you have a response or rebuttal?
Slumlords have been around a long time. Doubling the staff is not going to solve the problem. You have people have direction and definitions where they're going to do. That's been the problem in code enforcement. It's been inconsistent, misdirected. And where do you put your priorities? Do you set them across to make sure there's too many, like in liquor stores, there's single bottle sales? Do you put the priority on people that are living in substandard conditions with the roof caving in? You've got to do it smart in a business-like way. That's what we haven't done in the city of Fresno.
Thank you so much. Kind of in that same line, we're gonna kind of wind down our housing section here. One of the things that's talked about a lot is the federal government standards and things that they would like to see happening in our local cities and neighborhoods. And they make mention of quality health care, access to education, quality jobs, wages, and healthy food and transportation. I was born and raised in the Southwest, a part of the city, and I know that the access to things like grocery stores within close proximity has been a really sad situation for decades. And for decades, I'm sure many of the residents here in Southwest Fresno have been promised a lot, but delivered very little. So when it comes to access to health care, when it comes to healthy food and transportation, what in specific do you think that you could do and put into place that's measurable within the first few months in office? What does your roadmap look like to improve the access situation within Southwest Fresno?
Well, I've been educated over the last 8 years on groups that advocate for healthy communities about the comparison between 93701 or 93720 in terms of infant mortality, asthma, all diabetes, all these diseases caused by lack of health care and lack of education. And grocery stores, shopping centers have not been available in healthcare in terms of physicians and clinics in Southwest Fresno. And I think primarily because I know the business model on shopping centers and on other developments is based on income. People are going to put a grocery store because there's X amount of people living there. They're going to generate X amount of income. And they do this concentric zone of, well, there's income within 1 mile, 2 miles, and those criteria have never done because I think in my time on the council, too much emphasis has been on putting too much affordable housing within the downtown area where that's good. People need to have affordable housing choices. You need to have more consumers. And when you have more consumers making wages, you generate the economics and the demographics that are going to attract the people that provide those services.
Just really briefly, a follow-up to that. Are there tangible items that you can send the audience home with tonight of things that you have given some thought to that can be done in Southwest to improve some of the proximity issues and the access issues when it comes to healthy foods and also transportation in addition to the health care? Are there some tangible things that you think
I'll give
can
you
be done currently?
One big thing that I did was the Darling meat rendering plant that had been in Southwest Fresno for many years. It was a huge mistake, a moral wrong that was done on this community many years ago. It was done back when things were sparse. It continued. Insult to injury was added when they put housing around that plant. And I was a swing vote that voted to say we're not going to uphold that CUP, that conditional use permit that allows them to continue. They wanted to expand their operations, and really for them, the best move was to expand their plant and move their plant, which we're doing right now. I would not want a meat rendering plant in my backyard.
Thank you. Councilman Supervisor Perea, I'd like to kind of address the same issues with you. When it comes to access in Southwest Fresno, what do you see as some tangible things that you can do, not long-term, but we're talking about within the first few months of office? What does your roadmap look like for access to health care, healthy food, and transportation within Southwest Fresno?
Yeah, I think the first one I'll touch on is transportation. I mean, I think with the funds that we have with our current fax system, I think we can very easily take a look at our routes to see what we can do to be more efficient in those routes in the community, because what we all know is lack of transportation is one of the key factors in lack of proper health care, food, et cetera. So we have to get people an opportunity to get from point A to point B. I think when you look at the opportunities that we have, maybe even across the street here, if we, working with State Center, can build a career tech education campus there as well as a community college campus, think of the energy that's then going to come around that. Then I think it becomes a little more feasible for a developer to start talking about building a shopping center in the area, and for other developers to talk about building market rate housing. I mean, you have to create the synergy somewhere, and the vision that the Fresno Unified School Board had working with the community to build this school here today was the first step, because I think this school is what's creating the opportunity for discussion across the street.
We're going to wrap up our housing section. I have a quick follow-up for you on that note. Talk to us, myself included, give us an idea of how far you think that people need to be able to access some of these items from their front door. In other words, as a child that may walk back and forth to school, how far does that kid need to walk to be able to get to a grocery store to be able to get fruits and vegetables versus buying candy and other things that may not be as healthy?
Well, I mean, I don't really understand or know that market completely, but it would just seem to me, just as a consumer, if I'm within a half-mile radius, I can walk. I know where I live by Fresno High School, it's pretty challenging. We lost a couple grocery stores there. We're trying to get them back too. It's tough when you don't have access to food, and then when you're talking about moms now who have kids or senior citizens who have a difficult time getting there, a half mile can be a long way too. So yeah, access is critical. We have to create transportation systems, but also create economic incentives, strategically working with the private sector to help build these centers. Just like I see Mr. Beggs in the back, I know he was a part of the shopping center that was built in Southwest Fresno many years ago, and it was about city and private sector money coming together to make a shopping center, a grocery store happen in Southwest where people said it never would happen. We made it happen.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move along to public safety, which is a critical issue in Southwest Fresno, as both of you all know. So, as mayor, how do you intend to address police misconduct and restore trust in this community to the sworn police officers, and vice versa? How do you instill respect for police officers from the community?
Yeah.
Yes,
How much
Councilmember Lee
time do we
Grant.
have for these questions? How much time do we have? 2 minutes?
4 minutes.
Wow.
But go ahead and start.
Let me start by saying that we're in a public safety crisis right now. The city of Fresno and most cities in California are under siege, primarily due to actions made in Sacramento. Prop 47, which released, and state prison realignment, which released prisoners on our streets, and made basically take all property crimes were basically no consequence for doing something. And we need to make a change in Fresno. We need to stand up to Sacramento to get the funding that we need, because the model that every city follows is you have so many police officers per population. We're grossly underserved. Now there's Prop 57 that's going to put even more criminals on our streets. So we probably need 1,000 police officers, but it's not just adding more police officers, it's how you deploy police officers. I believe we need to follow a community-based policing model that puts police officers in the streets. It takes them away from being an occupational force, from being a paramilitary force, to being a friend that builds a bridge with the community and the police department. And I'm not an expert by any means, but I would bring in people that really understand this program and can fully implement and take the best practices from other cities. we've got to change how we're doing things. And this is a successful city compared to other cities, but times are changing, as it was said many years ago in my youth, and we need to make the changes that go along with it. And the challenge is going to be the money to hire the police officers. We've done, on my time in the council, 5-year budgets, because you make a decision to hire a police officer, that's $100,000 per year. You just don't go 1 or 2 years on a grant and then you're stuck with it. You have to have long-term sustainable funding, which ties into economic development and job creation.
Thank you. Supervisor Perea.
Yeah. Very, very complex issue in this country and obviously in this community. You know, before I came out, I was talking to one of the students that toured me around. I asked her about crime. And she said, yeah, there's gunshots, and sometimes we hear it inside the house. And my mom says, we got to stay in the house because we can't go outside. Okay, we have to do better than that as a community. And I honestly believe that the next mayor is going to be a leader, has to be a leader, has to be front and center of every city department, including the police and fire and everybody else. That has to be the visionary, has to be the face, has to be the spokesman of the community to start rebuilding the trust that we need to rebuild in this community. And I think there's a lot of people in city departments, uniformed fire and police, that a lot of folks, everybody's doing the best job that they can, but are we perfect? No, we're not. Can we do better? Yes, we can. And I think that's the vision that the next mayor is going to set for this city. Now, you know, when I think about the opportunity that we're going to have over the next year, because Chief Dyer has announced his retirement in this community, and we are going to have the opportunity to select the next chief of police for this city. So shame on us if we don't do it right, because I can assure you that just as you have your mayoral candidate standing here in front of you, my promise to you is that my final candidates for chief of police will be standing up here too, answering your questions. And I'll be sitting in the back watching how they respond to you, because that chief is going to have to connect with the community, and then we're going to have to then we will take a look at the 21st century policing model, which I've started to look at more in depth, and we're going to be implementing true community-based policing in this city. So that's where I think we're going to go to restore the trust. And in this entire city, it's not just our police, I think it's in our entire city, and we're going to do that.
Just following up on that, what do you see as some of the deficits right now in relations between the police department and those in Southwest Fresno?
Some of the deficits right now, I think is human interaction. I think sometimes it isn't quite what it should be, and I always do not like to second guess or Monday morning quarterbacks what somebody's actions that occur, because I can tell you, having been a reserve police officer in this city, having worn the uniform for 15 years and been in patrol, I can tell you, you can be riding down the street, heading to McDonald's for our dinner, and the next minute you're in the middle of a shooting or a very serious, dangerous situation. So it can change like that. So I think we've had a lot of situations where maybe people could have handled things differently on both ends, both the community and the law enforcement officers. But I think the opportunity that we have is, as people, I just think if we're all rowing in the boat in the same direction, we can turn this city around. It doesn't take much, because this is a great city. But I think the opportunity that we have to bring on a new chief of police over the next year to 2 years is going to be monumental in this city, and we all have to be a part of that decision.
On that topic, I have a question for both of you, but I'm going to start with Councilman Brand, because you were heard saying that in the search for a police chief for the city of Fresno when Chief Dyer retires, that there's nobody in the department right now that would be good enough, adequate enough, or whatever, and that you would go outside of the city of Fresno to find a new chief. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, first of all, there are some really good people in our police department, but I think if you look at 100 years of our history, I think in one time in 100 years they brought an outside person in. I think it lasted 2 years. So there are good people here, but I think when you have a system that perpetually just one person after the other, you never really get any new ideas. I think we need to get the best and the brightest. There may be somebody out there in Virginia somewhere, some promising rising star that has some new ideas and better ways to handle problems. And when you have it always in-house, not that there, again, aren't good people, you never get those ideas and those methods. So I would definitely, anybody, of course, could apply for this job, but I would have a national search, I wouldn't be constrained by the money. And when I was there, when Chief Dyer first retired, well, we're going to pay $200,000 a year. We can't pay $200,000 a year. The city has all these financial problems, but you can't afford not to pay enough money. I think you need to pay $300,000, whatever it's going to take to get somebody as good or better than Jerry Dyer to meet the challenges this community faces, not only from a moral point of view and how we relate to people, but from a financial point of view. One bad chief, one bad decision, I've been in closed sessions, is going to cost millions of dollars in lawsuits. So it's an investment well worth investing in to get, again, I would go with the best and the brightest.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that, Supervisor
Yeah, I'll
Perez?
just very quickly say, we're going to have the best police chief in this country. You're going to be a part of helping me make that selection. Community will be involved. And I can tell you that we have qualified people within the Fresno Police Department who are in a position and have the ability to step up to this job, and they're not afraid of competition, and neither am I. And I know they will put themselves up against anybody in this country, and we're going to go through that process, and I will bring you the top 3 or 4 candidates that you will be proud of to help me make a selection for the Chief of Police.
Okay, I'll start with Councilman Brand. We're going to wrap up our public safety area. We've talked a little bit about some of the outreach needed to the community within public safety and kind of the back and forth between both the public and our law enforcement. Talk to us. There's been a lot in the news here lately about profiling, about the interaction, and the respect. We've talked a little bit tonight about respect with law enforcement and the community. Give us your thoughts on a way forward on what you think is an acceptable level of profiling, for lack of a better term, or for other terms that may be used that really essentially say the same thing. We look for people that look a certain way to find out if something's going to happen. What does your road forward look like? What does your administration look like with public safety in regards to that topic?
Well, this is an issue that, has really risen, of course, in the last 2 years. And it shows you through whose eyes you view the problem from. And I'm in a unique situation with my granddaughter, who's African American, that I've raised since she's 2 years old. And I know we had a discussion about, the Ferguson when it came out. I'm pretty well had my mind made up, and I listened to her and I go, wow, that's an approach I didn't see, and it's kind of broadened my vision and my wisdom of how I look at these issues. And I think it's a very critical issue. There's got to be a fine balance between what is respect and what is abuse. And I don't, to me personally, tolerate disrespect unless it's not deserved. And I don't get pulled over for, at 2 o'clock in the morning because my license plate is the wrong color or I didn't have a sticker on it. But if I was African American and I got pulled over and I was driving a Mercedes, I would feel offended by it. And I think we need to address that issue in Fresno. I think it's something we've looked at, but I think it's something we can definitely improve on, because those are the incidents that start, an innocent pullover, somebody gets killed, and then there's a riot in the city.
Just a quick follow-up in this, we can kind of transition over to Supervisor Perez in this same vein. Just in light of the commercial, obviously, that you have your granddaughter on, and you're talking about some of the interaction with her, many minorities in the crowd will know what we're talking about when you see the social media postings about having the talk. Is that something that you guys had to have with her, or something you're comfortable sharing with the audience, being that you're in the unique situation that you have an African-American relative? Have you all had to have the talk with her?
Yes.
Can you share with the crowd or elaborate on what that was like, and maybe how that gave you a different perspective, or maybe what perspective it gave you from having to have that conversation with her?
Well, it's not just with my granddaughter. This is her friends who come to my house, and I hear a different perspective. And I always taught all my kids, respect authority, and you don't mouth off. But again, you got to respect your rights too. And remember, one person's had a gun and one person doesn't have a gun, so it's not a very even match. And we've seen across this nation in the last few years innocent incidents that started that way and escalated to the point where somebody got killed. And we had the Dylan Noble thing just recently. In fact, I met Dylan's mother last week, and believe me, that's not thing I'd ever want to go through.
Thank you. Supervisor Perea, same topic, not necessarily the talk specifically,
Yeah.
but talk to us about some of the community relations. What is it that you want residents of Southwest Fresno, in particular some of the younger teenagers that are just starting to kind of branch out on their own, what is it that you want to let them know about the road forward for you when it comes to profiling, things of that nature?
Yeah, okay. I think one thing about these forums, you get to see our leadership styles and what our value system is. And I think when Mr. Brand said, well, you have a confrontational situation, until they lose respect, then you maybe, I guess the next sentence was, then you behave differently as an officer. And that's where I fundamentally disagree. You always treat people with respect. I mean, I can tell you as an officer, I was spit on, I was hit, lost a few fights, but I never treated the people with disrespect. I did my job. And I think 99% of the officers out there do that. They go out there to do a good job and protect this community. So, when part of your question was profiling on the other one, I can tell you, I've never experienced an officer who just woke up every day and said, hey, there's a certain ethnic group that I'm going to profile, and I'm going to just make that my fun day. I can't say I've ever seen that, but what I can tell you is this. And it may be an element of profiling, but every day we'd have bulletins before we'd go out on patrol. And we'd have a bulletin basically saying, we're looking for a suspect who stole this car. We know it's a white male, 5'7", blue shirt, green pants, Raider baseball cap. So when you're out in the streets and you're looking for a certain type of vehicle and a certain type of description, you're going off of something.
Just a quick follow-up on that. I think that I do understand where you're coming from with that. I think one of the aspects of that I'm curious about, what is your plan for communication with the community, maybe to explain that to some of the junior high and high school age students that may experience some of that? What do you see as a plan to be able to open up the lines of communication so that the youth that are in the community understand maybe why some of that is happening and they don't think they're just being targeted? Yeah. What can we do to open up the dialogue at the senior levels, police chief level, within your cabinet, to help with the explanation so that some of the youth that it may be experiencing that will start to understand about why some of those things are happening?
Yeah, well, I think part of the program is, I know going back when I was on patrol, we had a pretty active POP program. So we had a lot of officers that were involved in the community-based police, and they were in the schools. And I know we have them now, but I think we need more. And I think one of the best uses we can use of even our retired police officers is to bring them back to help us in that effort. Because we have to open that dialogue and show people it's not really us and them, it's all of us together. And I think that's what this city needs to do more of. And, and I think it's a two-way street too. I think the officers and us as a city, we can learn a lot for the community, but we can't have those lessons learned unless we're communicating with each other. And we just have to open those doors wide open and not be afraid of what we're going to hear. Some of it may hurt, some of it may make us mad, but you know what? It's going to make us better.
Okay, now we're going to start with some questions from the audience. Gun violence is unfortunately something that our community must deal with, and oftentimes there are innocent people, even children, that are becoming victims. What will you do as mayor about the gun violence in our community? Councilman Brand.
Well, it starts at home. The parents, to teach the kids about guns, and unfortunately a lot of young kids, particularly in Southeast and Southwest, don't have that, that guidance, and they, at a young age, they get involved, they get in gangs, and at that age, you're going to live forever, you're invincible, and you do horrible things when you shoot people and kill people. And I don't really know if I have an answer for that. It's something that's engaged not just at a personal level or family level, but at a societal level. We've got a society that glorifies violence, that has probably the highest murder rates in the world, and we have a lot of guns out there in the streets, I think, and I'm a Second Amendment advocate, but there's a balance to proper, sane public policy. And now look at schools. I walk into school. I went to school. The only police officers are out there pulling me off, but today everybody's got a campus, security, you have lockdowns. What has our society evolved into? Well, college campuses? I don't know. This is a sad commentary on this country and our system and our way of life. And this is something that not only is answered here locally, it's got to be answered, that debate going on in between Trump and Hillary Clinton about what we do as a nation to end this violence. And we have far too much violence here in Fresno. I think, start by listening to people and finding solutions and teaching young people that violence and killing is not the answer to solve their problems.
So that would be your answer, is talking to young people.
I mean, I don't know. Really, I could sit there and make up a bunch of
Okay.
stories, but there's no easy solution for it.
Okay. All right, Supervisor Perea, how would you answer that? What would you do about the gun violence in our community? Here in Southwest, they have almost a shooting a day.
Yeah, no question, a very serious issue in this city and probably magnified in Southwest Fresno. You know, I think working with the community, number one, has to be the cornerstone of this effort. You know, just talking to the students that I've talked to today, I mean, there's a lot of great people that live throughout this city. And I would argue that the percentage of our population that engages in that type of behavior is very small, but it has a devastating impact on our community. So I think it's talks about, I think what we have to start in opening that dialogue in this community is about gun violence, talking with our children, meeting with the families. I know I was schooled by the West Fresno Ministerial Alliance a few years back about things we were doing, we're trying to positively impact. You remember that, Pastor, right, Binion? Doing some good things in this community, but the message was the same, is that government can't do it all. It has to be a partnership, and that partnership is your faith-based community, your families, government working together. And I think in a case like this, gun violence is going to end when I think we bring more prosperity to a community, we get people working, we give people a different path and direction to go instead of the hopelessness that a lot of them have. Because I've known a lot of these folks. I've met a lot of them when I was on patrol. They're not bad people. You know, they just went the wrong way. They went down a path that just seems easier for them to go to cause crime or create crime than to do something else. But I think when you give people a path to opportunity and prosperity, they're going to take it. So I think we need to do a combination of a lot of things. But I also think the community engaged in being responsible for itself too is important too. People need to let us know who the bad guys are in their community so we can deal with them.
Thank you. Supervisor Perea, we're going to kind of stay in that same vein of what you were just talking about there. Job readiness, obviously, with our junior high and our really high school age of students here, as well as others in the area. What do you see as a key for some of that economic growth? Obviously needs to come from people that are ready to be able to assume those jobs. What do you see as a key for job readiness for residents of Southwest Fresno?
Job readiness for Southwest Fresno, great question, which is why going back a little bit to the high-speed rail question that I talked about, we understand that there's a lot of a training that has to occur, because you're talking about from the people that are going to be washing the trains to the engineers that are putting them together and doing the electrical systems, to the people that are running the control station that are running the trains up and down the system. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And working with President Castro, working with State Center, working with our high schools, we are already designing the curriculum to train the workforce to perform those jobs. I think there's just a lot of activity, a lot of good things happening. I think once we bring the Mandela Center also to the Fresno area, that's going to be increased training. But one thing I'm going to do as a mayor is because I keep talking about a mayor creating a vision and investing in that vision through its budget. I mean, there's a partnership right now in this community with the Boys and Girls Club and a few private sector entities where they give jobs to kids. And I think what the city has to do is invest back in its children. And one of the kids that were giving me a tour, they were asking me about that. And we absolutely need to connect their experience in school and give it meaning by giving them internships at City Hall, so they're applying what they're learning to real life experience and they're making a paycheck doing it. We have to invest in our children.
Thank you. Councilman Brand, same question.
Just connecting jobs and school.
Yeah, these are questions that come from the public, and one of the questions is in regard to what is your plan for job readiness for the residents that specifically live in Southwest Fresno?
Well, I think one of the problems we've had in California in general is this educational model where everybody is presumed to go through high school, go to the University of California, become a biologist, a physicist, or a doctor, a lawyer. And a lot of kids simply are not going to go take that path. What I've learned from people I've talked to is that generally that decision is not made till probably 10th or 11th grade. And that's when you need the alternative career technical education, as I mentioned earlier, to have those opportunities to have a facility that we really don't have in the city of Fresno. And One of the things the city can offer to job training is internships. The city has 3,000 jobs. They've got plumbers, pipe fitters, bus mechanics, drivers, a lot of stuff that can offer internships. And we also got to go just beyond that level of job training. To certain people, I think it's hardcore poverty. You've got to find, just get up in the morning, get that GED, and programs like the Fresno Bridge Academy that take on people that are in public assistance, take on the entire family, and go into parenting skills and the basic things you need to become employed to get beyond that level. That's what we have to do. We've never done that in the city of Fresno, and there's a large segment of our population that simply misses out.
Thank you. This is something that you both have referred to tonight, and that's the money from the cap and trade funds, the $70 million coming into our city. You both have said that you would use part of that funding in Southwest Fresno. What specifically, or do you have anything specifically that you have in mind for that money? Supervisor Perea.
Yeah, the reason, well, I'm going to tell you no. I don't have anything specifically in mind because I believe that's a community decision. So I don't want to be presumptuous and decide for the community what they want or what they need. But I think the most critical part of this cap and trade question is it's $70 million that won't be allocated until probably sometime next year. But they're fast tracking the decision making to have the decisions made to allocate it by this November. And I think that's a danger because that means to me a shortcut public comment period. It means all sectors of the community will not be heard. And I think in the end, I'm not saying the money won't be put to good use, but I think we shortchange if we don't have a full out discussion on where that money should go. So I'm going to advocate very strongly, and I started tonight, that the city stand down and not allocate that money this year and let the next mayor handle that by working with the community to allocate those dollars where the community believes it's most important.
Councilman Brand.
Well, the definition of cap and trade is pretty broad. It affects disadvantaged communities with adverse impacts on health care and air quality. And transportation, public transportation would be one area I'd look at. And as Henry said, too, I think this probably should be carried on into the next administration with the amount of money that's out there and the profound impact it's going to have on the community. But transportation would be one major component. And we talked about the bus rapid transit, improving the high-speed rail station. And infrastructure, of course, is the thing that has kept most of the, particularly in Southwest, has held up development because the economic model it costs to build and incentivize, whether it's industrial, residential, commercial, is the high cost of bringing in the infrastructure. So you can also use it for parks, trails. There's a wide variety of things you can use this money for. And we can certainly argue that the city of Fresno is lacking in parks and trails and maintenance costs for all those things. And just essential, curbs, gutters, streets, sidewalks, all those things that are really probably much more lacking in Southwest Fresno than in Northeast or Northwest Fresno. So there's a variety of things that can really improve the quality of lives for people in Southeast Fresno when it's spent properly.
Thank you. Another question from the public here, and it really kind of continues on with the curbs and gutters and sidewalks. Of course, those are things that'd be great to have around new homes. One of the questions that's posed here is there's talk of a new development potentially coming into the old Running Horse area. If you care to address that, please do, but if not, let's talk a bit larger new development potentially in Southwest. What do you see as the potential for new home development there? And also, where would you like to see that go? We'll start with you, Councilman Brown.
Well, again, the Running Horse was kind of ahead of its time. It was basically never going to make it at the time. Running Horse, there was a text amendment to actually make it an agricultural land. I think the way it was done is that market forces just aren't there right now to develop that. I know the Granville, the property owners have put this in ag production right now, but there's probably better opportunities, and there's this new area in Southwest Fresno. Is the key to developing housing is doing economic models. And you have larger, wide open tracts of 20 to 40 acre parcels with the infrastructure, because there in Southwest you got a direct line to the sewer treatment plant, there's a water main. Those are the components you're going to bring the cost down. And it's going to just take the income level for tract builders to come in and build starter houses in the $200,000, 190, 195 range. They're going to have a model where they can buy the land and develop the land at a cost that they can create a profit, and that's just going to take continued economic growth, job creation, and using some of those cap and trade monies for infrastructure.
Thank you. Supervisor Perea, same question?
Yeah, could you just say the second part?
So we're addressing the Running Horse area because that was brought up by one of the members here in the public, but also even beyond Running Horse, what do you see as potential for new home development there, but also across the greater Southwest Fresno area? When would you like to see new subdivisions and things going in within the Southwest Fresno area?
Yeah, Running Horse was a silly horse. I think that's probably a better name for the project. I think I was one of the 2 or 3 elected officials at the time who, though I was on the county board, I was watching what Mr. Trump and his family were doing, and they were just trying to fleece Fresno is what they were trying to do. And fortunately, it got to the point where they went away. But, development in that area, I don't know. I think the greatest opportunity, at least that I see immediately, is if with this school here and the potential of a college across the street, I haven't driven around the area, but I think a potential for housing development could be around this area because it has the type of things that you have that would support it. And I think it would make a commercial center then want to say, hey, I want to be a part of this infrastructure too. Now, will it need public investment? Probably, because it's going to require probably some benefit given by the city, whether it's the cost of land or some other factor to help in the helping the developer get to the bottom line to make the project work. But I think the opportunities are up. I would circle around here first, see what it looks like.
Thank you. Well, it's that portion of the debate where you each get to have your final words. And since you started, Councilman Brand, I'm going to allow Supervisor Perea to start. You have 2 minutes to give your final words.
Okay. Well, first, again, I really do want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I know you'd probably rather be somewhere else enjoying your family time and having dinner and all, but this is important for this city because you're going to have the opportunity to pick the next mayor of this city that's going to create a vision that I believe it's time to unite this city. I think we've had, and I've worked with Mayor Patterson, I worked with Mayor Autry, did not work with Mayor Swearinger in her direct administration, but I watched from afar. And I think they all had good hearts, and I think they tried to do their best, but I think there's some gaps. And I think the gaps that we have in this city are the fact that we have not been able to bring this city together united as one. We're divided by more than a street. We're divided by railroad tracks, we're divided by culture, and we're divided by faith in some instances. And I think sometimes a lot by just misunderstanding. And I think because we don't connect more with each other, people, create fears. Or they create ideas about folks. And I think it's time to tear that down. And I think what you'll have in me is a mayor who understands what it is to work with people, that it's going to engage people and bring them into my administration so that they are touching every part of what we do. And I can assure you that I will be the kind of mayor that will have an open door policy, someone that will have a community advisory board. And even though I have a board, it doesn't mean you have to be in a board to talk to me. Because I think if you know me as a supervisor, my phone number is out there. Everybody has my cell number. Call me and we'll meet because it's important. Because I can only be as strong and the city can only be as strong as all of you and everybody else in this city. So we got to get to work. We have to create jobs. We have to create and change the quality of life in this city. We have to bring everybody together. We have to be inclusive. And when we do that, we're going to have a great city. So I leave you with that. And again, I thank you and all the sponsors for hosting this tonight, and I look forward to being your mayor in January.
Okay, Supervisor Perea, thank you. Councilman Brand, your closing statement.
Again, I want to thank everybody for putting us together. And as I look at these young kids out here, and I talk to the guys that did a good job introducing me, and I think I see myself many years ago when I was same age, misdirected, and didn't really know what I wanted to do, but give these kids encouragement to, follow your dreams and do the best you can do. There's a lot of great things out there. I started this decision about 4 years ago, and it really didn't dawn on me as I got within like a week or two of the deadline of the enormous task I was taking on to run for mayor. I was a council member in Northeast Fresno, and And I would literally, I'm serious, Henry, I would wake up in the middle of the night. Am I doing the right thing? Do I really want to do this? And believe my wife would say, don't do it, don't do it. But this was really a major anguish for me, and I felt nothing like I've ever felt before, just taking on the entire city and feeling the hopes and aspirations of an entire city on my shoulder. And I accepted that. I embraced that responsibility. And whether you're 93720 or 93701, there's a huge responsibility. And it's been more than just a physical journey. This has been a spiritual journey for me to go to this point in time. And it's going through this whole primary and all the debates and meeting a variety of people with different issues. And Southwest Fresno is one of the biggest areas where there's the most concern and our biggest challenges. And I like to do, as your mayor, is to make sure that this city prospers, that I do those things, not only leading with my head, but listening to my heart on what's necessary to make this city prosper and make sure we all work together. We're all in this together, North Fresno, South, East, West. I like to do those things to make us one city and to get beyond this generational poverty, all these problems that beset this city for so many years. And I can't do it by myself. Politics is a team sport. I would look to my colleagues on the council, I look to the county, other agencies, and to the people in the community for help and guidance on trying to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just ask one thing, and I'm sorry I can't leave it, but we were both their age at one time, but these kids are not misdirected. These kids are our future, so I would not refer them as
I was misdirected.
Okay.
All right, well, that brings our evening to a close.